Yo, what's up everyone? So recently, we felt that Bedwars maps are getting a little stale. So we hopped onto Fiverr and ordered 3 maps at 3 different price ranges to see if we could get some new creative Bedwars maps. With that, let's start with the first map, Swamp. This map was created by Priih, and this is their basic package, which is $10 and was made for us from scratch. Now for context, this along with the other 2 maps we got gave the creators complete creative freedom to come up with whatever they wanted for the map. For each map, we are going to rate and review them based on 3 categories: theme, build quality, and playability. So let's hop into our review of Swamp. So for the theme, I think some of the pros would be the color palette is super good. I think that fits the theme quite well. And the bugs and the boats all throughout the map are also cool. I think it helps fit that theme of a swampy and muggy feeling.
Now, there are a couple cons that I would like to touch on real quick. First of all, I think for the theme of this map, one thing that could tie it together a little bit better is if there was more of a grassy area. There's all this glass around the map, and honestly, I don't know if it fits. It looks kind of like clear water, not swampy water. So in that sense, it doesn't quite fit, and I think that it could be done better in that way.
Yeah, I think all things considered, the theme is pretty well represented though, so I think I'd give it around a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think a 7 out of 10 is a perfect rating for it as well. All right, now onto the build quality for Swamp. A couple of the pros that we noticed, inside the bases are particularly good, and the Diamond Gen Islands are sick. I think that might be the best part of the map specifically. It turned out really well.
I do think one thing that could be improved on would be the depth of the islands, because they're currently only 1 layer of blocks, and I think it looks a little weird, so adding a few more layers might have been a little bit better. But I'd still give it a 7.5 out of 10 for the rating.
Yeah, I think I'm about in that range as well. I would give it an 8 out of 10 personally for the build quality rating myself.
So for the playability, some of the pros would be that there's enough space for PvP, and I like that there's a parkour aspect throughout the islands. I think that it adds a nice little touch and kind of differentiates it from a lot of other maps.
Now, there definitely are a few cons for playability. The first is that the Diamond Gen placement definitely could be better. If it was placed a little bit more centrally in the map, I think it would tie things together. One thing that's related to this as well is both the middle and the side rushes are nearly a stack apart. They're just way too far away. So maybe putting that Diamond Gen in the middle of the map might help that as well. One other thing that's definitely worth noting is the top of the base really lends itself to players like camping and hiding up there in those pillars, which is definitely a little bit of an issue. And while it's cool aesthetically, it definitely does hurt the playability of the map. Overall, I think I would give the playability around a 3 out of 10 for my rating. There are definitely some cool aspects to it, but some really major issues as well. So honestly, not the best rating there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10. Again, some of the aspects are cool, but I think a lot of the cons kind of weigh them out. Obviously, Swamp is 100% an awesome map. Make sure to check out Priih's Fiverr, which both that and the map download will be in the description for anyone wanting to check them out. But let's move on to the next map, Avaris. Avaris was made by Maxime H, this being their standard package, which is $15. Now, one really nice touch that came with the map was they added a story that went along with it, which is such a cool touch. So here's how the story goes. 8 rich warriors fought for their palace in gold, but in a rush, all of them fell, leaving the place abandoned and under the control of the environment. But with that, let's get into our review of the map. Now for the theme, some of the pros would be that it definitely gives off adventurer vibes. With the trees and the vines, it looks really cool. I also like the aspect of including a queuing lobby that matches the map, and I think hypixel should do this for all their maps as well. I also like how the colors for the bases are incorporated well into the theme. It doesn't look forced and it looks really cool. And of course, I love how it included a story for the map. I think that's awesome.
Now, moving on to the cons, I'm going to be real. There are absolutely none. For me, the theme for Avaris is definitely just an obvious 10 out of 10. It is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. I'm also going to give it a 10 out of 10.
Now, moving on to the pros for build quality. I think the map creator was incredibly creative, especially with the trees and nature in general. The bases have a lot of depth and height to them. It really looks professional. It looks like it could be an actual hypixel map, and there's a lot of consistency in the builds across the islands themselves. So definitely a lot of really cool things to note here for the build quality.
Yeah, and similar to the theme, I don't really think there's any cons. The build quality is super good, and I'm gonna have to give it another 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 for me as well.
So for the playability, some of the pros would be that the islands are spaced really well, and I also like how the diamond gens are placed. They're in a really good spot, which can make it really convenient for rushing. And I also like a lot of the features it has. It has a lot of indoor and outdoor spaces, which can make PvP interesting. It also has parkour around middle, which is also really cool. And it has some waterfalls and pillars and other things throughout the islands, which can make your PvP experience a little bit different from other maps.
Now, there are just a couple cons for playability. There are pretty small, but one is that there needs to be just a little bit more space around the bed, just for like bed PvP, spaces for bed defenses, that kind of thing. And there are not many open spaces with flat ground for PvP as well. One thing is oZook and I also noticed some other things that aren't necessarily a pro or a con, but we still think they're worth noting. One is that you're able to get around the map with very few blocks. I don't think this is like necessarily a good or a bad thing, just something that's interesting. And then there's also a lot of water, which could be annoying, but also adds some variation, interesting opportunities for players not taking fall damage in certain scenarios, stuff like that. So definitely a couple just interesting things that we noticed about the map. Overall, I think I would give it about an 8.5 out of 10 for playability. Definitely pretty good and some really notable pros.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think I'd also give it an 8.5 out of 10. Again, make sure to check out the map and Maxime's Fiverr linked in the description. However, let's move on to the final map, Crystalline. Our final map was built by Universalc or Universalc. We ordered their standard package, which is worth $30. So without further ado, let's hop into our review of it. Alright, so for the theme, some of the pros would be that the dirt under the crystals are really cool. I think that kind of fits the vibe of being pulled out of the ground. I also like how water is represented in the bases as well, as it kind of fits that earthy feeling.
Now, on to the cons for the theme. The team colors feel like they're applied a bit randomly. I'm not sure what those glass swirls at the top of the islands are supposed to be. So maybe some more color in the crystal would communicate the team colors a little bit better for that. The other thing is there's also glass on the top of mid. And again, I'm not entirely sure what the map creator had in mind or what that's supposed to represent. It doesn't tie clearly into the rest of the theme. It looks cool, but it just doesn't quite match the theme in my eyes. The other thing worth noting is that the bases, Diamond and Emerald Islands, are all different in terms of how they feel. The bases have these crystals, the diamond gens are just like balls kind of floating in space, and the middle has this like magical clean vibe. And by themselves, they all are really, really interesting builds, but it doesn't really feel like they tie together. So overall, I think that I would give this around a 4 out of 10 for the theme.
Yeah, I think a 6 out of 10 would fit the theme for me personally.
All right, now moving on to build quality. The first pro is that the view from the middle island toward the side bases looks absolutely fantastic. The scale of the build in those crystals is really, really impressive. And one thing that's really worth noting is that the crystals look fantastic at night. They kind of glow and it looks really, really cool.
So for the cons, the main part of the build are the crystals, but that's actually not where the players are going to be playing. I also think that the block palettes could use something other than bedrock, as if you're not using a texture pack, bedrock usually does not look very good in builds. And I feel like there's a lack of details in general. The build is large and that definitely packs a punch, but attention to some smaller things is missing, like the smaller diamond gens and other little aspects are definitely something that could have been improved upon. But I think overall the build quality is probably a 6 out of 10.
I would agree with that as well, a 6 out of 10 for me.
Now for the playability, there are definitely a ton of pros. First things first, you can access the shopkeepers in the generator, and I think that's a really nice quality of life aspect. I also like how there's quick and short bridges in this map instead of one really long one. And finally, there's also a really nice flat ground ring around middle, which I think is really good for PvP.
Now moving on to the only con that we have for this map for playability. The crystals kind of dominate the map, but honestly they don't really have any purpose for gameplay. Getting up on those crystals definitely would kind of break the game and it would be really annoying to play with, so you definitely have to block that off with barrier blocks, but it's really not that much of an issue if you do that. One other thing that we noticed that doesn't fit into the pro or the con category is that this map would definitely be speedrunnable. It's extremely fast paced. All those islands that are connected allow you to get around the map using very few blocks. So honestly, just a really interesting thing, and if this were a real hypixel map, I think we'd definitely see some speedrun records on it. All in all, the playability for this is definitely really, really good. I think I would actually give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think for playability, this map probably deserves around a 9 out of 10. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. All the maps were amazing, so make sure to check out the downloads and the creators' Fiverrs linked in the description.